After spending some time looking at one-step inequalities using addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division kind of separately, we're now ready to tackle two-step inequalities. So the I can statement for section 9.4 is I can solve two-step inequalities. Inequalities. And the warm-up question is, how do we solve inequalities? Now, I mentioned this is going to come up over and over and over again. We've mentioned this several times, so you've got to make sure that you've got this understood, because you are going to encounter inequalities in the future, and you've got to know how to solve them. They're not that hard. That's the nice thing about covering this unit at this point. We know how to solve equations really well, and basically we're just reviewing those with one little twist. And here's the little twist. We solve inequalities just like we solve equations, except when we multiply or divide by a negative. It's only when we multiply or divide by a negative, and then we switch the direction of the inequality. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to solve these, and again, the main thing we're looking for is, are we multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative? If we are, we're going to switch the direction. If we're not, we're just going to leave it alone. And again, like all the other ones, it just says solve each inequality and then graph the solution. So on this one, we're going to isolate the variable terms, so we're going to add 1 to both sides. So this gives us a 66. Adding doesn't change the direction of the inequality, so I'm going to leave it like that. I'm then going to divide both sides by -6. That's going to give me -11. That's going to give me an n over here, which is what we want, but again, we were dividing by a negative, so we're going to switch the direction of the inequality. There's the answer. It's just a couple of steps, and as you're doing each one of the steps, you just think, am I multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative? So we did on this one, so we switched the direction. Again, I'm going to put 0 on here for a reference. There's -11. I'm going to circle it. I'm not going to fill it in. I'm going to read this from the variable, so I'm going to read n is less than -11, or the answers are less than -11. So we would shade that way, and we're done. Let's take a look at the next one. Again, that fraction bar groups the top and bottom together, so those are kind of like having a parenthesis around them. So we're going to multiply this side by 9, and we're going to multiply this side by 9. So we get x minus 6 over here. Again, we were multiplying by a +9, so I don't change the direction of the inequality. Even though this side turns out to be negative, it was negative to begin with, and we didn't change that. Then we're going to add 6 to both sides. Let's see, that doesn't change the direction of the inequality, so we get a -3. Circle that. We've got the inequality part of the answer, and now we want to graph that answer. So here's 0, here's -3. We do fill it in because it can actually equal -3. It's got that little line underneath it. And then again, reading from the variable, the answers are greater than -3, so the answers are bigger than -3, so they're on the right side of -3. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Here's the variable term right here, so I'm going to get rid of the 3 by subtracting 3. So this is negative x over 2 greater than or equal to -11. The answer worked out to be negative here, but all we did was subtract, so that doesn't change the direction, so I keep it that direction. And then I want to get rid of the dividing by 2 and the negative at the same time. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply by -2 on both sides. The negatives would cancel and the 2's would cancel. That would leave us with an x. We did multiply both sides by a negative, so we need to switch the direction of the inequality. So we're going to go like that. And then -11 times -2, that's +22. So there's our answer there. Now, again, this is another one of those interesting cases where, it's everything here worked out to be positive, but because we multiplied by a negative, that's why we have to switch the direction. So you'll notice we've got a greater than, and then the step that we multiplied by a negative, again, we had canceled that guy right there. That's when it switched the direction. So here's 0, here's 22. We're going to circle 22. We're going to fill it in. We're going to read the inequality from the variable. The answers are less than or equal to 22, so we're going to shade this direction right here. All right, let's take a look at this guy here. We're going to add 9. Let's see, that's going to be negative 22. We added, so that doesn't change the direction. We've got 4n. We're going to divide by 4. We're dividing by a positive 4, so that doesn't change the direction. So you've got an n over here, and let's reduce this. 2 goes in here 11 times, and 2 goes in there twice. So there's our answer there, negative 11 halves. So you can think, we're going to leave it this way, but we're going to think negative 5 1/2. So we're going to put 0 here. I'm going to put negative 6 here and negative 5 here. So negative 5 1/2 is right in between. And again, I'll label that as negative 11 halves. And we don't fill that in. And let's read from the variable. The answers are greater than. This is the bigger side. That's the small pointy side. So the answers are greater than negative 11 halves. So we're going to go this way. Really pretty quick once you get the hang of it. Another fraction bar right here. So we are going to multiply both sides by negative 4. Those are going to cancel. We multiplied by a negative, so I'm going to switch the direction of the inequality right now. 3 minus x on this side, negative 12 on this side. And again, we multiplied by a negative, so we did take care of that switch in the direction. If you mess that up, you're going to get the answer wrong, so you got to be really careful here. I'm going to get rid of the 3 by subtracting 3. Subtracting doesn't change the direction of the inequality. So let's see, that's negative 15. Doesn't change the direction of the inequality. Okay, now here's where we run into, we've got a negative x. We don't want a negative x. So we want its opposite. So we want the opposite of negative 15. We also want the opposite of this right here. And again, you can see why we would do that, because we're going to divide both sides by a negative, or if you wanted to, you could multiply both sides by a negative. So that's going to give us a 15. That's going to give us an x over here, but because we divided by a negative, we're going to switch the direction. It's going to go like this. So there's the answer. Here's 0. Here's 15. We're going to circle it. Let's see, we are going to fill it in because it can equal that. And again, let's read from the variable. X is greater than or equal to 15. The answers are greater than or equal to 15, so we're going to shade this direction right here. Now what I want you to note on this one right here, this is kind of interesting on this problem. You'll notice that it started out a less than and it ended a less than, and think about why. We multiplied by a negative, that switched the direction. We subtracted, that didn't switch the direction, and then we divided by a negative. So we actually switched it here in this step and then switched it back. So it's possible for it to switch back and forth several times if that's the way the problem works out. Okay, you should be in good shape for the assignment.